an important part of any negotiation is the relative amount of power that the two parties possess. And when we say power, we mean a negotiator's ability to give themselves an advantage that will increase the probability of a favorable outcome. Clearly, when we negotiate, all of us want to be in a position of advantage, in a position where we are likely to reach an outcome that is favorable to us. But what are the various sources of such power? Let's first give a brief definition of power. We have power when we can achieve outcomes that we desire, or when we get things done the way we want them done. But there are actually two distinct perspectives on power. The first one is probably the one you have in mind, namely having power over someone, having the power to control or dominate the other party. This perspective on power is closely associated with distributive negotiations, where we use power to control and dominate the negotiation process in order to craft a deal that is favorable to us, but not to the other side. This use of power can get you a good outcome on substance, but it might ruin the relationship since the other party will feel powerless and dependent on us. And most people don't like that feeling. A different view of power is called power with. This is power that comes from being able to develop joint goals and cooperation with the other party. This second perspective on power is obviously associated with integrated negotiations, where the two sides together have the power to craft a deal that is mutually beneficial. Here we might be able to get a good outcome on both substance and relationship. There are actually many different sources of power, and the 5 major classic types of power are expert power, power from having unique information about a particular subject; reward power, power from having the ability to reward others for doing a particular thing; coercive power, power from being able to punish others for not doing a particular thing; legitimate power, power from holding an office or a title; and referent power, power from having earned respect or admiration from others. These sources of power are important and do play an important role in negotiations. However, when we think about negotiations, we usually refer to the following 4 sources of power instead, but they all overlap with the classic 5. The first is called contextual power. This is power derived from the context or the situation, and it is usually related to the level of dependency between the two parties. The most obvious source of contextual power is having a good BATNA. A good BATNA gives you power because you're less dependent on the other side, and therefore you can be more aggressive and more confident. On the other hand, if you have a weak BATNA or no BATNA, then you have no power. Either you accept the other side's proposal, or you are faced with a bad alternative. The second source of negotiation power is called informational power. This is a very common form of power, and as we know, information is power. Having the ability to find and organize information to support your argument is very powerful. Being able to make a rational and logical case for your proposal will give you a lot of power. You will be more persuasive. It is also true that if you have access to information and you understand the situation very well, then you will be able to challenge and counter the other party's proposals. The third source is positional power, which can be divided into 2 categories. Legitimate power comes from your position. This is, of course, a common form of power within organizations. The second form of positional power stems from resource control. People that control resources have a lot of power. And as we mentioned earlier, the reason is that if you control resources, then you can either give resources to people who do what you want, or you can withhold resources from people who do not do what you want. The fourth source is relationship power. And again, there are 2 main types. The first is called goal interdependence. That is, how interdependent the two parties are. How do the two parties' goals depend on each other? If the achievement of one party's goal depends on the other party also achieving her goal, then the goals are interdependent and they are in a power with situation. And we are likely to have an integrated negotiation. However, if the goals are competitive, so that the achievement of one party's goal requires the other party to not achieve her goals, then we have a power over situation and we're likely to have a competitive distributive negotiation. A second form of relationship power is referent power, which, as we mentioned earlier, is the power that we derive from having earned respect or admiration from others. This is power that you can unlock by building a relationship with the other party, a relationship built on liking and trusting. Anyway, having power is important for negotiation success. But I want you to remember that not all sources of power are about being able to hurt or punish the other party. There is also a lot of power from goal interdependence. So do seek to establish power with the other party.